This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wednesday's podcast, which means it's a meditation podcast. Today, our special guest is Caitlin Powell, my wife. You might have heard an interview with her early on. I believe it's episode 13, 14, 15, I think. Episode 15, you did an interview with her. Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, random guess. I don't know.
I was
Shot in the
15.
dark, shack in the dark. If you are tuning in for the first time every Wednesday, we just kind of do meditations. We talk about different things in relation to recovery. We talk about what we're going through, what we think, all that kind of stuff. With that being said, how are you, Hunter?
Oh, you know.
It
is the last day of Recovery Coach Academy. So I'm feeling it. Caitlin definitely knows what I'm talking about too, because you guys usually facilitate these classes together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the struggle bus is here, you know, especially these terrible ideas we have of getting over here and podcasting at 7:00 in the morning.
Well, and the reason we have to do that is obviously because you go on vacation. Like we have ethics in a cert next week, and then right after ethics, you're on a train. Or are you flying?
I'm taking a train.
Yeah, you're on a train to Indianola.
Iowa. What about Caitlin?
How you
Our
doing,
special
Caitlin?
guest.
I'm good. Very tired. This is my first adult interaction all week because I've been watching the baby. So it's kind of nice to talk to adults.
And for those of you who may be watching on YouTube, the baby is literally just right off camera, like right here. So don't think like, where's the baby at? What's going on here?
And if I get up, it's because I have to fix his pacifier.
Yeah, she may have to leave at some point. But with that being said, because it is Wednesday, we are doing some meditations or just deeper things. So, man, I think I'm going to go full bore into it. I want to talk about yesterday, and because we had Recovery Coach Academy yesterday. And yesterday was Thursday for our Recovery Coach Academy. Obviously, we're filming this on a Friday, but it's for Wednesday. So you do the math. I'm not gonna spell it out for you. But no, Thursday Recovery Coach Academy is always interesting. You wanna break it down for why it's interesting?
Yeah. So we have in the beginning sessions, it's cultural competency. We talk about power and privilege. And then there's it's called the power shuffle. I was trying to remember the name. So basically, the culture and cultural competency, we bring people in and ask them to define culture and define cultural competency. And usually the answers are pretty straightforward. Like culture is a set of values, you know, norms, history. We have a definition, folklore, things like that of a certain set of people. And then we have cultural competency, being more an organizational thing, historically speaking, a business, allowing, it's usually a policy and procedure or something like that that's put in place by businesses to allow them to interact with certain cultures. The business, the individuals inside of the business and things like that. So it's usually a policy on that note. The privilege checklist, I can remember doing it when I was in
White privilege checklist, to be particular.
I didn't know we still called it. Did we call it that?
Yeah, well, that's the formal name for it is it's a white privilege checklist. It was developed. I want to say it's Peggy McIntosh. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to double check that.
So yeah, it is always an interesting topic. So I remember doing it, and that would have been about a year and a half ago, probably.
Somewhere in that avenue.
Over.
Yeah, that's about right.
And I remember doing it, and it kind of shocked me. I'm from small town Iowa, so I was pretty secluded in what my cultural experience was. I talked about it a little bit last Wednesday too, kind of the people I was around and my addiction and things like that, influencing my viewpoints on these sorts of things sometimes.
Sure.
I think I shared it at least. I'm pretty sure I brought up some of it. So when I'm like talking about culture and cultural competency and white privilege, I was really not aware it was a thing, the white privilege piece. I remember during a class, during my class, I actually said that. I was like, is this really still a thing? I'm like, Civil Rights Act happened, you know?
And I remember because I was the person that was training that class at that point, and Caitlin was my co-trainer, but you half the class is like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, who's this kid?
But I think, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that it's like your experience with that specific topic that is really a hot button issue right now.
Mhm.
I don't want to call it a hot button issue. I think because hot button implies that it's like it's flash in the pan and it's going to go away. And it's like, I don't think this goes away. I think that it inevitably reaches a conclusion and it keeps going until it does so.
Just like the Detroit riots.
Yeah,
right?
it is like, I think it will meet a crescendo, but I do think that this will be a continued topic of discussion, at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, there is a thought in me that it's like, okay, what is this generation that is coming up? What are they going to look like, and what are their kids going to look like? And I think by the time the generation that we're now seeing going through, elementary and middle school reaches like the college age, we may see this topic in particular become a completely different animal entirely.
Jonah, what kind of social environment he's going to be surrounded with? Sorry.
She's got a very quiet voice sometimes, so I got to make sure that she's spoken for. So yeah, but I always find it interesting.
Really quick, for those who don't know, Jonah is their baby. So that's,
yeah.
what you're saying, the environment
yeah.
Jonah's going to be brought up in. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
I-
he's a
I-
month old.
You're not like the guy who got swallowed by the fish?
Yeah, wait a second. No,
Same
but
guy.
I always find that topic interesting because it's always, you get to see, I feel at least in part, that question brings out the demographics in the class the most.
Mhm.
When we do that exercise, because that exercise, for those of you who've never taken Recovery Coach Academy, or maybe you're planning to, or maybe never, and just kind of stumbled across this, that exercise is really weird because it's like, hey, we want you to do this checklist for 10, 15 minutes or something like that. And then we want you to facilitate a conversation with like nothing, no questions or anything like that. Just facilitate a question about that checklist for like the preceding like 30 to 45 minutes.
Yes, it's pretty heated usually because there is no lead up or explanation, and that topic is a very delicate topic nowadays. I mean, it always has been, but more so now, I think. And people automatically get offended, usually even by the title of the checklist and then the questions. And people usually want to be very defensive when they are having that conversation. But after that conversation, we go into a much more eye-opening exercise that everyone seems to unite and get on the same page. And
At least that's the hope.
yeah.
Usually
they do. But,
Okay.
yeah, true.
But no, I don't know. I always find that portion of the class interesting because it's definitely, the way that we set up Recovery Coach Academies, and you've now been through enough of them that you've experienced this. It's like we start prepping for Recovery Coach Academy almost 2 months out, between setting everything up and getting everything going and ordering
Let's be clear,
materials.
you do all that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
getting the materials and getting everybody signed up and ready and applications into the hands of those who want it, and then having to do follow-up calls to make sure, especially with like the online, you got to do follow-up call after follow-up call. Like, remember, you have like this call that you have to be on before the actual class starts so that we can make sure that you got all the setup and you got your book and all that kind of stuff. And then you open up that book and you start going through, the first day with everybody through the agenda, and you're like, because it's a 5-day course, and you go, oh, day 1, we're going to go through this. Day 2, we're going to go through this. Day 3, we're going to go through this. Day 4, yeah, we're going to go through that too. It tends to be the most impactful day. We always say that, but it also is like that day is the make it or break it day.
Mhm.
Like the day that we just went through yesterday is always like, and maybe this is bad of me to do this, and if it is, I'm sorry to any other recovery coach trainers or anything out there, but I always consider the success or it's not failure, but could have been better of the classes dependent on that day, because that's the most difficult discussions you're going to have that day. That's the most, because
To see how they react and how they deal with the way that part of the class is presented. really does show like their ability to work in the field successfully, like you were saying, or whether they're going to burn out. Or I think that's the best way to say it, because people who don't really take that exercise well are the ones that want to go in and save the world and not have healthy boundaries and not set like I said, boundaries or expectations for themselves, and then they will burn out probably.
Yeah, more than probably. If someone doesn't do all that, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say
Well, and
it's an
how,
impending doom.
how often, man, and I'll speak to both of you on this because you both are trainers, but I know you've only done a couple of classes at this point. I know you've done more classes than we probably can count at this point and train more people. How often do we run into these classes and we say over and
Mhm.
over and over again,
Every time.
you're going to struggle with burnout, or you're going to this or that, or you're not going to pay attention to me on this. I'm telling you this, and about 6 months into this job, you're going to look back and you're like, wow, they were right.
Mhm.
Like we tell people over and over again, and yesterday is no different, where it's, we get them in and we tell them, I believe starting on day one, and we've done that this time around, you are going to struggle with biases. That is a given.
100%.
And everybody always says, no, not me. No. It's like, trust me, there is somebody out there that has done something or that looks in a certain way or believes a certain thing that you're not going to want to work with.
Mhm.
Promise that. Like, it's just a matter of fact. And it doesn't, I at least experienced for the first 3 days, people kind of, shake their head, nod. Yeah, okay. And then we get to yesterday, day 4, and they're just like, oh, crap. Like, yeah, there is like biases there.
That's
There
the
is.
bias checklist that we did yesterday, right? That's part of their homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, and that was kind of impactful on me because I was kind of thinking like, oh, I get along with everybody. I know I was raised in a certain way, and I did have certain biases. And like I said, I talked about that a little bit. I don't want to go too in depth on it, but like I did have certain biases when I came around the Lansing area being so secluded.
Mm.
And I remember going through that list, and there's certain things on there that's like, well, I probably wouldn't be okay with working with that person. It's like when we actually see like that list of like real world stuff that we work with, people who've done certain things that we do work with, it's like changes the situation to a real life thing,
And it's not that we want to point out that you have biases and that you don't like certain people. The important thing about the biases is we point them out so you can recognize which biases you have and set them aside before you walk into the room with whatever individual you're working with, because no matter what opinion you have or no matter what bias you have, that's not important in this situation. You set that aside so you can give this individual the care and the attention that they deserve and that they need, which is they're struggling addict or alcoholic who needs help, and you are the professional who's there to help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it is a matter of trial by fire. I think we've always said that, the people that get into this field, taking our classes, a lot of times we are the door. We are the ones that a lot of people recognize if they're going to end up being in this field, or if maybe this field isn't what they thought it was or what they want to do, because we are the first step. You have to get trained, right? So you have to come to one of our certification or one of our classes to get CEUs to be certified. So people walk in and they have a preconceived notion. And I mean, what do we always say? Like, first day is like,
if you're here for a paycheck, there's the door.
there's the door. So there's one, but the other one is always like, your preconceived notion of what this is not accurate. You are not going to be paid to be a sponsor. You say that every time. You won't be paid to be a sponsor. And then the second is, you may think that you're coming into this because you're going to try to save the world by the power of your testimony, and you're going to be paid for it. Not going to happen. Like, this is a job. This is a field of work. There is regulations. There is guidelines.
There's a very specific avenue that we have to go down as recovery coaches, even if you are certified in anything else, even if you are a sponsor. When you're, like we always say, when you're wearing the recovery coach hat, you are a recovery coach. Even if you're a therapist or a licensed therapist outside of work, when you're working as a recovery coach, that's all you are. You're not a therapist. You're not a doctor. You're definitely not a lawyer. You're not a sponsor. I think we go over that on day 2, all the different things that you're not,
Right.
and the very important rules to remember of what you can and can't do as a recovery coach is very important.
Can I just-
I'm not a doctor, but if I was,
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Oh my
Well, and
gosh.
that's a huge thing is when you work as a recovery coach and you're working near therapists, you pick up on the lingo of, okay, so tell me, how does that make you feel, and how do you feel about that? And it's like, you should never be using those words as a recovery coach, but I think some recovery coaches fall under.
Well, they end up, I think, just falling into it. Let me preface something real quick, because there's an interesting thing that's happening at this table now, and I don't think, and I mean, I catch it because I've been privy to kind of the inner workings of certain things. But so my lovely wife, who's sitting to the left of me right now, for the better portion of the last several months, has said, I don't think I could really do recovery coaching anymore. Like, I really want to be a mother. And we've been having a conversation, right, about like, okay, are you going to go back to being a recovery coach, or, you want to be a stay-at-home mom for a little bit? And either one that's completely fine with me. Either one that she wants to choose. But one of the reasons she said I don't want to be a recovery coach is, I just don't know if I could do it. Like, I don't know how to do the work again. Like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, let's ride a bike. And clearly we put a mic in front of her, and it's like, she's already teaching the class. She's remembering what days are happening on what thing. She's like, on day 2, yeah, not day 3. And that, it's like, so let me just say, you may not want to be a recovery coach, but you can certainly train.
Oh, yeah, I told you that. I can definitely be what I say, it's a something contractor.
Private contractor, a hitman.
I mean,
I can be a bounty hunter.
you could be my I could be a manager, and then you could be my employee.
I could finally give
Yeah.
you that
Yeah.
opportunity
I
to
could
manage,
finally-
for
exactly.
you to manage me.
If you guys were last Wednesday, remember, I'm not a manager yet.
Right.
Name it and claim it. So
That would be funny.
yeah.
So yeah, I think on the other note, name it and claim it.
Make claim it. No, just kidding.
Okay.
That's a good one. You should keep that.
Yeah. No, but we tell people so often that are getting into this field, like and I love this, and I credit Hunter completely for this, because he's the one that definitely was able to identify this pattern and then kind of bring it up in class. And then I end up using it and passing it off as my idea, so I look like a smart person. But he said that, this class is really designed so that we can show you what it looks like if everything goes right. If everything goes according to plan, this is what it should look like. And the reality is, that's not this field. Nothing goes according to plan, or if it does, seldom does it work out.
Do you know how many times I've thought in my job that I'm gonna get, like, not that I'm gonna get fired, but like I'm doing my job wrong? Because like I remember going through RCA and seeing this, like, or Recovery Coach Academy, RCA. So like I remember going through that and seeing this be like this field of like everything's regimented, everything's black and white, everything's gonna go as planned. And then I get out there and I'm like, this isn't what they tell me. I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because it doesn't feel like what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, I think that's why, and I don't know how you guys train together, but a lot of times when you and I would train together, people would say, it sounds like you're teaching us of everything, of what not to do. Which is what we would bring to the academy, because we want people to know what not to do, because if we don't tell you what not to do, you're going to do it. And then something bad happens, i.e. people, in prison for doing something wrong when they worked in the field.
Well, and
previously.
I think what you're talking specifically about, at the end of each day, we do a pluses and wishes segment. We do kind of like, what were the goods, what were the bads of the day? What would you like to learn more about? What would you like us to keep? What would you like us to kind of maybe strip? And we had heard a couple of different times that you guys go a lot into like the negatives or the do nots of this field, and we'd like to hear more do's. And the reality is, like, when we bring up do nots in the class, it's not to hear our self-talk. Right. It's not like we're bringing up the do nots because, and here's the problem, we could fill the entire class with do nots because we've seen a lot of them. We probably still have, to this day, haven't seen all of them. Yeah. But the ones that we choose are the ones that people more oftentimes than not end up doing.
Right.
And we've seen too many times where people have this mentality, especially going into our class, because we do a little bit of tracking after the class of, well, the class was fine and they taught me some good stuff, but you know what? I'm going to still try it my own way. And then they do some of the do nots and then they get in trouble. Right. We get a call from, their manager, what in the world were you training them in this class? We get a call from them, I just got fired, and it's like, we don't do this stuff to hear our self-talk. We're telling you these things because we're trying to sidestep the learning process for you, because we learned them, we saw them, we've seen people walk these things out and it didn't work.
Yeah, I'll say the do nots aren't really that like stringent either. They're I guess they are. They're like, this is
sense, you would think.
Yeah, like don't violate HIPAA, don't violate 42 CFR Part 2. don't have sex with clients.
Yes.
You know,
Pretty simple stuff,
Yeah.
rudimentary things,
It
people.
is.
practice self-care. There we go.
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
do nots. Yeah, or
That's
don't.
a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, but the self-care is the huge problem.
And we'll talk about that
And
today.
set
Yeah.
boundaries.
We're because we're gonna be we have to film an episode after this because we have to film all of our episodes before Hunter leaves on vacation so that we have everything prepped for next month. But one of the things that we're going to talk about in that episode is specifically about like multiple pathways of recovery and self-care. So definitely tune in for that.
Yeah, and setting boundaries is really important. You are a really good example of setting boundaries because me and Christian were talking about something that I yesterday. I was like, just have Hunter do it, and Christian was like, no, he won't do it. I was like, why? And he said, well, because it's after 5 and he doesn't work after 5. And I was like, oh, I respect that about him.
There's an occasional, like, Christian will call me and say, you're gonna hate me, but I'll give you a half day tomorrow if you do this thing tonight that will take you 30 minutes. And I'm like, you know what?
Worth it.
There's an exchange happening here that I like.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I believe in free market principles, so I'm not going to tell him to do anything after hours that I'm not willing to.
Pay him
Like,
for.
and a lot of the things too is a matter of like I would normally do them, but I just don't have time sometimes. Like if I'm asking somebody else to do something, it's literally because I do not have enough time to do it myself oftentimes.
Yeah.
And back to I think the discussion, because I think this discussion was evolving out of, we were talking about the white privilege checklist, and we were talking about some of the things that we see, commonalities that we see in the class. And I think that ultimately people are going to do what they're going to do and they're going to believe what they're going to believe. And I can just hope that maybe them coming to the Recovery Coach Academy is going to create a focal point for them where they can maybe start having a conversation with themselves about this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there's an awareness, right, that comes with doing that sort of checklist, doing this exercise of like really assess your biases. Like, take a look. Do you have underlying racial or racist thoughts? Like, you may not be vocally, like, you're not walking around calling people out of their name and stuff like that, but there might be some underlying beliefs you have against a certain culture that may not be true. That's where I found myself, is having a lot of beliefs when I came up here that were not true to the culture.
Sure.
And I struggled with that because I noticed it when I was in like Endeavor House, being around different cultural groups, different ethnicities. I really did not know, like, I didn't expect the relationships to be the way they were. I didn't expect the interactions to be as fruitful as they were because I had a preconceived notion of what I thought that person was going to be like based on what I saw in the news or what my parents told me, or, something like that. Versus the reality of the situation. And like, it's nice to finally come into awareness of that because, like, yes, I recognize that's not good. It goes against my morals, but I also recognize that it's there and that, like, what am I going to do about it now? Like, how can I address it? I have to have an awareness of it. I have to have a consciousness of it in order to do anything about it. So
that's one of the biggest keywords that I found, a couple academies previously that I've taught is, and it doesn't say this in the book for us to teach, but that is awareness, that people need to be more aware, like, because once you become aware of things, you know how to react to it, you know how to deal with things properly where other people won't be offended or where you won't get in trouble, versus lack of awareness. If you're not aware of your biases, or if you're not aware of yourself, that's a huge thing, is when people are not self-aware, or they're not aware of other people, the way they come off is going to be very rude, or could be rude or offensive or hurtful, iatrogenic, unintended harm on people. So yeah, that's a huge thing, is learning to be aware of yourself and your beliefs and your biases, and as aware as you can be of other cultures and other people, so you can have a better understanding of what you're dealing with instead of those assumptions.
right.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty with those assumptions, because here's the problem that I think a lot of people end up usually drawing, and I've seen this too many times in the Recovery Coach Academy not to see it as a pattern. People immediately assume several things. First and foremost, they have a preconceived notion of what an unconscious bias is versus like a conscious bias.
Right.
Like an unconscious bias, yeah, that might be searching for the boogeyman. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to say. It's basically like It's basically saying like there is this thing deeply rooted in your brain, or there's this way that you interact with your specific culture, your culture interacts with other cultures, that is manifesting biases. And it's like, it's difficult to search out. Like, do I agree that it exists? Yeah, sure, I agree it exists, but it's difficult to search out. But the second thing is, people often believe that they have no biases, and then it's like, well, why is it when you see certain things in the news, or why is it when you hear certain names, or why is it when you hear specific specific news stories about racial groups or something like that, you immediately go into defense, you immediately go into like no, or no, that should be more, or, and it's like, well, what's that an underline of? Because that might be pointing towards something for you. I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm saying like that why is it a triggered defense instead of like, okay, like what is it? What do you say? Water off a duck's back. You said duck off a water's back the other day.
Yeah, water off a duck's back.
Yeah, duck off a water's back.
You know what I'm trying to say.
You don't know what I'm trying to say. Don't misquote me. But there is a point where it's like, if you're seeing things about racial groups in the news, or you're seeing certain things starting to happen, I'm not saying all things by any means, but if you're seeing certain things that it's immediately triggering to you of like, well, we all suffer, or we all do this, we all do that. And it's just like, nobody's arguing that. But for some reason you felt it necessary to argue that. And that should be an indication to you that immediately, like, why is that popping up for you?
Right.
The easiest way to kind of open people's eyes to realize that they do have biases is saying one thing or two things, however you want to look at it, is if I say that I am a Republican, the reactions of the class, or if I say I'm a Democrat, the reactions of the class, it's like, okay, there you go. So
Well, and we always say that, like, I can ostracize half the class with, several words. I am a Republican. I am a Democrat. And I always love doing that, especially when we do in-person classes, because everybody immediately shifts like in their seat. Like when you say the first one, and we switch it each time. We say I'm a Democrat, and then you see like half the class go, and it's just like, see, you're doing it right now. Like,
because everyone is real defensive.
I'm a libertarian, by the way.
In case you're wondering.
In case you're wondering.
Yeah.
Nobody asked.
Yeah. Free market, small government,
Yeah, because like we were saying, everyone does like to say, no, I get along with everybody. I like everybody equally and everything. And then you say that and it's like,
maybe not.
Yeah.
I honestly, I find that kind of funny now. I've noticed it in the class. I've noticed it outside the class too. And that's that I like everybody. I all culture groups, I was raised to, treat the janitor the same as the CEO. And it's like, I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
It sounds good.
It sounds really nice. Yeah. But like, it's probably not true.
That's
we
exactly
should-
like, that ain't true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
we
but
should strive to do that.
Right.
Absolutely. We should strive to treat the janitor as the CEO, for your words, we should strive to treat everyone equally. And when we're working in this field, we really should at all times be working towards treating every individual equally.
Right.
And I don't know if I would say equally, but I would say with the most attention that they need, that they deserve as an individual who is struggling with the addiction. And like I've told our classes before, the information we teach is golden. Like, you can utilize this not only in the recovery field, but in the real world. Like, so I treat all my clients equally. I should treat everybody in the world equally too, right?
Right.
If I'm going to McDonald's, the person taking my order, I should treat them the same way as I'm treating somebody at a bank or somebody.
The same level of respect.
Yes, absolutely. That's it.
Yep.
Same level of respect, no matter what, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what culture they're a part of. We should strive to do that. It doesn't always happen, but that should be the goal.
well, and that's I think we talked about that yesterday. We talked about it yesterday in the class, but we also talked about it in the meditations we were filming yesterday, which it was generally along the lines of like, everyone is owed respect. Like, no one should have to earn my respect. The concept of earning respect is in my opinion, it's not appropriate because it immediately, first off, it implicates that your respect is worth earning. That's number one. Number two,
Right.
and as many people would
Don't
say
you
that to me,
know
I'm
who
like,
I
I
am?
don't care what your
That
respect
sounds-
is there, but like,
Very like military.
well, exactly, and it's
Not
like-
saying anything bad about the military.
no.
at all,
And
but-
here's the thing. I think there is a time for, with an asterisk that I'm happy you brought that up. It's like the military, sure, you do have to earn respect in the military. That is literally like the definition of how you ascend the hierarchy in the military. In that case, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Absolutely. But I think in everyday life, it's like, I don't have to earn someone's respect necessarily. My respect is immediately going to be given to someone. I will respect you. And I would even differentiate between the two. I would say like, there's two kinds of respect. I will give you respect in the sense of I will give you common courtesy. I will not treat you as, lesser than myself,
Civil.
as civil, but at the same time, the secondary respect is those that I allot to like people I care for.
Right.
And, that respect, yeah, I could see you may have to earn that of like, I would say that people maybe flip respect and trust. Like I will show you common courtesy, but I'm not necessarily going to trust you.
Yeah, and I think you got a good point there when you're talking about the different types of respect. Like you literally, I think there's only one really respect, and then there's, like you said, there's trust, and there's like a friendship level or like a family member. There's that kind of love aspect or whatever that might be there. But like, yeah, everybody. I mean, I don't think I could be around anybody that told me like you have to earn my respect because that's insinuating that you're going to disrespect me until that point, and I don't really have an interest.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
you know?
immediately what my mind goes to.
Yeah. It's like, if you're going to disrespect me for 3 months while I work to earn your respect, I'm sorry. But that's a lot of work and I don't have time.
I pass.
you know?
That shows a huge power differential, which is again something we also teach in Recovery Coach Academy is to try and limit that power difference.
Right.
Because I'm no better than you and you're no better than him.
No, I'm better than him.
Okay. Let's be clear.
Let's get that straight.
I
Right.
mean, on paper, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, like I was saying, we like to show people that no matter if you, just because I have almost 7 years clean and I'm a core trainer and I'm nationally certified doesn't mean, it really sounds like I'm trying to say I'm better than you, but
Let me brag real quick. eh? But I'm not.
doesn't mean that I'm better than you. Because we're trying to show people that we are peers,
Right.
working together, one struggling addict helping another.
Right.
Maybe I'm struggling a little bit less
Training
today.
differently. Right.
Yeah,
it-
exactly. I've
I've-
overcome some things that you haven't, so I'm trying to, help you.
Yeah, I've seen it like what you're talking about. I don't see that as like saying it like you're better, like I can sit down with the recovery and like they look at me and sometimes they're kind of impressed,
Yeah,
I'm 22 years old and I'm working in a recovery field and I've got, almost 3 years clean.
Mhm.
And so that's impressive to some people, and like they see me working towards something and like my level of integrity and things like
Yeah.
that. Integrity. And it's like I've had recoveries compliment me on that before, like, hey
Yeah.
man, you're doing really good. I look up to you. And I'm like, well man, don't look up to me, but realize like if you do this thing, you can be better than I am right now in the
Mhm.
same amount of time. So like it's not I'm better than you, it's like I've been doing this and you can too.
Yeah,
'Cause
leading by example.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference between saying I'm better than you versus like I've been at this for a while and these are the blessings that can come from doing this thing. You
It's
know?
all about the way you present it. Like Christian has, again, in the academy brought this up. It's all about presentation. If you offer somebody a nice sirloin steak on a fine piece of china, they're going to want it a whole lot more than if you offer it to them on a trash can lid. If you say, oh, look at me, look at how good I'm doing, hear my story of my success to the recovery, they're probably not going to want to listen to you versus if you say, hey, brother, sister, I know what you're going through. I've experienced something similar. This is what I did. These were the consequences, or this is what I did, and this is how I overcame it. They're going to want to step in line, I think,
Yeah.
a lot more following suit.
You went Hulk Hogan there for a minute.
Me?
Yeah. Hey brother, hey sister.
Oh.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about recovery, brother.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Ma'am, sir,
Yeah.
whatever.
I got you. I just thought caught that. I was like, hey. It reminded me of that meme that's like it's like Maury and he's saying like the DNA tester results are back and it turns out that not everybody is your brother. And it's just like,
Trying.
Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
For sure. So I believe that as far as yesterday goes, it was an interesting day. It always is an interesting day. And I don't remember who brought it up because I think someone he brought up a really good point and how quickly it changes like speed. Like because we go all of the morning on Thursday, we're talking about like culture, power, privilege, and ultimately in the midst of that you start to get things like, you know, ethnic identity. You start to get things talking about like personal life experiences and how you've dealt with you know, your racist aunt or uncle or whatever.
And then we're like, well, let's go ahead and go into making referral.
yeah, I'm like, now we're gonna teach you how to what your job's gonna be.
Hard left.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is the
Sorry,
first
bud.
3 days, it's a lot of information. Like it's a lot of fast talking. It's a lot of like stories, examples, this, that. And then we get into this stuff and we're talking, we have a really, really detailed, slow, calm discussion,
Yeah.
especially when we're doing like the
It's drinking
power
from
shuffle.
fire hose,
Oh, yeah.
man. The first 3 days for sure.
Today's going to be too, but
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's important that it was set up to have a slow conversation about the power and privilege and about different cultures and everything, because that, like we know that's a delicate subject. So we need to give it the time for people to talk about, for people to understand, for people to come together on different ideas. Because usually what happens on the fourth day, a lot of times, is people will have a one-track mind, or people will have beliefs in one direction, and then at the end of the day, hopefully, their view has broadened, or their belief system has changed a little bit.
Right.
And that's usually is what happens. That's the goal.
right. I mean, on all my classes that I do, like for I obviously teach with the recoveries. I don't do these very often. So like the classes I do teach, like seeking safety, peer facilitated group, and chronic pain path, not as much on that one. That one's more of an instructional sort of thing. But the other two, it's really an awareness key. So like with seeking safety, it gets into some really deep issues. And I feel like that's kind of what this class does too. It's like when we get into that sort of stuff, it's like, I'm not here to tell you how to address these things. I'm not here to tell you the best ways to deal with your problems that you might be having, like the trauma or anything you might have experienced. I don't know. I'm not a therapist. So like I reiterated during the class when I get asked questions, like, how do I deal with this? Or how do I cope with this? I'm like, look, you got a therapist, man. Like go and talk to that therapist. Now you have an awareness of this problem. Utilize that to talk to your therapist about it, you know? And like this class is kind of similar in the sense of like, now you're aware you have this bias, talk to somebody about how to get rid of it, educate yourself. Cause I really do feel like when we talk about something like racism, I know for me, like I don't want to say I was a racist or anything like that, because I don't believe I was. I believe I had unconscious biases that were instilled in me since a younger age that I had to retrain.
That it wasn't, and it had very little to do with like what your actual opinion was, and it had a lot to do with like it was the framework, how you understood the world, like
Generational. Yeah,
it was generational.
Right.
Because that's the other thing on that, and then I want to let you finish up, but I see that way too much where people, they get their perspective about the world or whatever it might be is cultivated and orchestrated by who they were around, their loved ones, by their parents, generational. And oftentimes they get into this point of like, I was taught this stuff. And it's like, here's the thing. There's a vast difference. And I think this is the important part of, if you were taught it and you continue to believe it, even though evidence contrary to that is being presented to you, and the evidence is, based in science and things like that, that's where you're wrong. Versus you believe it, were taught it, and then evidence is presented to you, new evidence is presented to you, and then you say, oh, okay, I'm understanding, like you did. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, most people's opinions are formulated. I mean, I think they say by the age of 7, so by the age of 12, it's pretty hard set. And then if you don't do anything to consciously retrain that, neuroplasticity, pathways, all that fun stuff.
Neuroplasticity.
I know big words. So if we don't,
what is neuroplasticity?
It's something that's in your brain, and it's the capability to recreate neural pathways in your brain. It's a certain thing that adults have in their brain that allows them to create neural pathways. That's all I need to know about it. When people say change is impossible, just be like, well, neuroplasticity actually proves that you're wrong.
I think a good example of what you're saying is like, as a child, when you learn something, that's all you know.
Yep.
But when you grow up as an adult, you are exposed to a lot more things, a lot different, a lot of different people and a lot of different experiences. So then you can choose to make your own opinions about those things. Then versus as a child, you're very sheltered. You
Right.
go to school, you hang out with friends. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. So anyways, what I was saying there,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
no, you're good. So like with the, with like racism or unconscious biases against culture groups specifically, or not even culture groups, just groups of people in general that you might have biases against. Really education is probably the best way around that. Just like we talk about stigma and addiction, the best way to reduce stigma is through education, through
Yes.
understanding of what this disease is, what it's like for the people going through it. So when we talk about like cultures and trying to educate ourselves around that, what I found is like when I came to Lansing, all of those all those beliefs that I had, all those things that were taught to me, all of a sudden got called into, well, this isn't what I was expecting. Like I had a preconceived notion of what these relationships should be like, and they're not like that. What these people should be like, and they're not like that. And I hated having to face it because it made me feel some type of way. There's my phone, in case you guys missed it.
Right at the end too, man. There it is.
Yeah, but yeah, that was pretty much it. Is like we have to just educate ourselves. We have to. If you're feeling these things, it biases against anybody, educate, man. Like learn about it, because I don't think that you can be around other cultures and start to like really experience it and still hold those biases, because it doesn't line up, because like, oh, this person should act this way. That's my assumption. And then they don't. And you're like, oh, well, now it's challenged. What are you going to do about that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's the best way to end this, is just with education, because it's the same thing with stigma and labels about addiction. You
Mhm.
know,
Educate yourself.
right? About different cultures, about different diseases, addiction, and everything.
Disabilities, everything.
Yes, the
Yeah.
more you know, the better input you can have, or the better outcome can happen, the better you can be involved versus again, awareness. If you're unaware of something, if you're uneducated about something, you're not going to be helpful
Right.
in that situation. And if we're trying to be helpful, we're trying to be recovery coaches, or just trying to help somebody in the field.
Or just be a decent human being. You
That
know?
too. Educate yourself.
Educate
Yeah.
yourself. So, with that being said, that wraps up Wednesday's podcast. For those of you who are listening, every Monday we do science-based education. I think it's ongoing. We're going to be doing the ACEs training. Should be finishing up this next week. Definitely check that out. It's a 3-part series on ACEs being released, 1 part each Monday. Every Wednesday we do meditations like you just heard right now. Sometimes it's a little bit more deeper like it was today. Sometimes a little bit more ridiculous like we have on past days. And every Friday we do interviews. Thank you.